just showing the ignorance. I even sat down with a gentleman, a legislator who touts themselves as, kind of an expert in this area. And in the conversation found out that he had no idea about the positive externalities of Bitcoin mining on the environment, on energy, on anything of that such. And even while I was just trying to be like, oh, no, here's just like one little thing. He literally said to us, "Are you guys crazy? Are you real?" And it was like, you're not even using like all the information available. You're cherry picking your own information to make your assumptions. And part of me thinks he was in the pocket. The crypto lobby was in his pocket. Is so huge. Mm-hmm. That it's just like, how do you counteract that? It's like a zombie apocalypse, and we're trying to fight back with education.
Hello, this is Bitcoin Libertarian. Today we are talking about grassroots Bitcoin advocacy right in the heart of the Midwest. Illinois might not be the first state that comes to mind when you think about Bitcoin, but a dedicated group is working hard to change that. Joining us are two key leaders from the Illinois Bitcoin Council, President Tim Niemeyer and Vice President Chef Hilsembach. Tim is the driving force behind the council, also the author of His Echo BTC and co-host of BTC Lincoln Land. Chef brings his experience as a 747 captain, C-130 navigator, and a passionate Bitcoiner to the VP role. Together, they are building a non-profit dedicated to fostering responsible Bitcoin growth through education, advocacy, and collaboration across the state. In this episode, we will explore why Illinois matters for Bitcoins, the challenge of state-level policy, their on-the-ground education effort, and how everyone can get involved. Guys, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We appreciate the invite.
Thank you very much. And for all the people who is watching us, we start recording this last week when I was in Bristol. Internet was terrible. The broadcast was cut couple of times, so we decided to come back when I am back in Hong Kong with my stable internet in my studio. So we are gonna go 100% to discover what is happening with Illinois and Bitcoin. Before moving on, doing these videos take us money and effort. So we ask for only one thing: subscribe to our channel, follow us, give us a like, share a comment, because doing so you help us a lot to paint the wall orange. Now, guys, the first question to both of you is, how were you orange pilled?
I was orange pilled back in 2018, and it took me a while to get orange pilled. I actually started, my stepsister got in on the 2017 run and did very well, and then 2018 everything came down, and my father, who is a corn farmer of all people, said we should get into trading cryptos and, that whole thing, and, just trying to make money, number go up. And the more I learned from 2018 to 2020, the signal became clear that it's Bitcoin only. And once 2020 hit, it's been Bitcoin only since then, and I haven't looked back.
Excellent. How old are you, Jeff?
I have a kind of a longer story. There's kind of multiple things that kind of got me into Bitcoin, but I first started off by learning how to buy stocks when I was 10 years old. My father taught me how to research stocks. So I got to experience the 1987 stock market crash. That was a big event in my life as an 11-year-old. And then, so throughout the 90s, I was always buying stocks. And then left through the dot-com boom, the bust, got in college, studied international business and international business and German. And I started working in banking in early 2000s. This before I joined the military to start learning how to fly. And so throughout that time, I kind of just kept learning about just finance in general. And after I joined the military in 2006, I did my deployments overseas. So that was a kind of a big event in my life, seeing firsthand what the military industrial complex is like, being deployed, going over to Afghanistan. So it really wasn't until 2021 when I was flying for the current company I work for, Coletta Air. really cool flight. I was from Anchorage to Chicago, and my first officer, who was an older gentleman, we started talking about investing, and then he mentioned about Bitcoin, and I heard about Bitcoin throughout like probably 2012, 2013, 2014, just seeing it on the CNBC tickers, and they started talking about it when it passed through $100 and all the way up. And I thought it was a scam. It didn't make any sense. But on this flight, my first officer started talking about it and started explaining what Bitcoin was, the blockchain, the decentralization aspect of it. He explained the fixed supply of Bitcoin. And it really, what got me was like coming from an investment perspective, like, oh, the number's going to go up. It's going to go from 30,000 to 100,000. So I'm like, oh, that's a great return. So he gave me some information, gave me the Bitcoin standard. And from February till about June, I just dove down this rabbit hole and just could not stop reading about it. And it completely turned my education upside down. Coming out of a business school, studying Keynesian economics, it was a completely radical shift to think about sound money in this way. And yeah, my world really changed from that point. And then what really got me was when I read Broken Money. Then Alex Gladstein wrote a piece for Bitcoin Magazine, basically how the Fed hides the cost of war. So when I tied my military experience overseas and now understanding how this whole mechanism was funded and how we are all paying for this endless war through debasement and inflation, it really set that Bitcoin is a true way of getting out of this endless war and getting out of this mess. And that's kind of where I kind of came into Bitcoin Veterans is another organization. That's how Tim and I met, is through Bitcoin Veterans. And that organization is trying to teach Bitcoin to military vets, because of so many of us have coming out of the military kind of disillusioned. There's a lot of nihilistic attitudes that come from military vets. It's like, well, we shed blood. We had friends that were lost. And then it's like, well, what was this really for? Especially when you see how we pulled out of Afghanistan. It's like, well, that was kind of pointless. So that's where I got orange pilled, and so now I have this passion to like really educate as many people as possible, and business owners, and Tim and I are on this mission together. For me personally, it's like, I don't want to ever have to carry another dead soldier in the back of a C-130. And so
yes. Well, talking about Bitcoin veterans, we were in contact with Bitcoin veterans. I know that there was a book that was being written, and they requested some of our AI images for the book, and we created some and we sent, but I don't know how did it end, because the communication was through my business partner, and I don't know if the book was released or what.
I don't know.
I haven't heard a book yet.
Yeah, I haven't heard of the book.
That's interesting.
Because we were contacted, we sent some pictures to them, the AI images we used to create for the book. And then I don't know what happened, because my business partner was in contact with them. So anyways, so moving forward, walk us through the Bitcoin Council. How does it work? How was it born? And how education, advocacy, and collaboration come together in practice?
Well, like Jeff mentioned, we met through the Bitcoin Veterans, and we both have been advocating on our own, in our own ways. I'm a teacher. I was in the Air Force, a lifetime ago, and I've been an educator ever since. So I've been educating, like you mentioned. I wrote History Echoes Bitcoin. I started the Lincoln Land Bitcoin meetup. I've been writing for various, organizations. I did some guest writing for Bitcoin Magazine. I freelance wrote for Mara, a Bitcoin miner, and I've been grinding my gears on my own. You know what I mean? And I always believe that, you want to think globally, act locally, and Illinois is our state. Illinois is not a great state yet for Bitcoin adoption, and it was a heavy lift. And as I saw that I wanted to keep educating, keep building, Jeff and I crossed paths, and what can we do together on a state level? So we're bringing together, like you mentioned, education, advocacy, and collaboration. So we started a 501c6, which is a trade organization, and our goal, I guess, is to paint the state orange. We've created educational curriculum for homeschoolers, for parochial schools. We advocate. We just have conversations with legislators across state, senators, representatives. We've hosted educational workshop for the state House Republicans. We've been reaching out to chambers of commerce. We've been trying to get businesses, merchants in Chicago to understand and start accepting Bitcoin and Lightning. It's been a grassroots effort to start building up members and really try and put our collective efforts together in the state so that we can help, Bitcoin adoption. Jeff, did I miss anything?
No, you got it all. It's a slow process. This is all volunteers that are in this organization. So like Tim and I both have full-time jobs. So it's just, we try to put as much effort into this as we can when we can. We have other volunteers that are actually sending out flyers and mailers. Basically, we've worked with the Cash App, finding businesses that are listed there and that are supposedly accepting Bitcoin. There's some on the Cash App map.
Yeah.
And we just pull their addresses and just mail out a flyer, just letting them know about the IBC and trying to build our membership that way. Just getting the message out there it's a slow grind, but slow and steady is going to win the race. This is the low time preference aspect of Bitcoin.
Of course, educating in Bitcoin is a slow grind, as you said, because it takes time, it takes effort, but we do it with passion. And as you said, you're trying to paint Illinois orange. But what are the biggest problems or the biggest challenges you're facing when trying to paint in Illinois, that we know is a blue state, orange?
It's a very blue state.
If we put the politics off to the side for a little bit, I actually just had a friend ask me how the legislative response is. And I guess I could talk about both of them, but so the right seems interested, and I mean this respectfully, but they're ignorant of the technology, and the left is either cautious or hostile, but, and again, respectfully, they're equally ignorant of what's they're really talking about. It's a brand new paradigm shifting technology that if you just go with what you hear on the mainstream news, you really have no idea what it is, and you have all these misconceptions. So the hardest part, whether it's left or right, is really first unteaching what they think they know about Bitcoin, and then teaching what Bitcoin actually is. But even in that process, as we figured out, it's like, it's not that simple as like pulling out this bad knowledge, putting in this, correct knowledge. It's all the underlying assumptions that they've been taught, whether we're talking like Keynesian economics or just basic math. You know what I'm saying?
I think the best response you got, Tim, was it's tulips.
I want to say senator up and around Chicago. She was very much like the very first minute of the conversation. Yeah, well, it's tulips. And I'm like, okay, this is going to be a fun conversation. I'm not going to get very far with you, but let's see what we can do. And it's definitely a marathon, not a sprint, on both sides of the aisle. One side is looking like they're more interested in, and that's a political decision partly. Because, anything that's deemed pro-Trump is kind of dead in the water, because like you mentioned, our governor sees anything in this wheelhouse as an attack on his party in a way. It's the politics of the game, which is unfortunate because the technology can help his constituents as much as it can help the others, So we're playing that political game, unfortunately.
Yes, of course, and this is because I think that, as you said, the ignorance of the people, they don't understand, and probably the Democrats now see Trump talking about Bitcoin, and probably most of the people that are involved in Bitcoin are more like right wing, something like that. So they see that probably with Bitcoin is a right thing. So we don't take care of that. But at the end of the day, Bitcoin is good for everyone, for left and right. I don't know if you read the book of Brian DeMint. At the end of the book, it puts a chapter that is telling that Bitcoin is not right or left. Bitcoin is good for communists and good for people who think in free market.
Same thing with resistance money by Andrew Bailey and Bradley Rettler and all that. It's a tool, and how do you use that tool? And is the world a better place for having that tool in it?
Yeah, it's almost like saying that gold is for the right. Like no one would ever say that, but it's the same thing. Gold is good for the left and the right. So yeah, it's a tough hurdle to overcome. And I think there's also a little bit of arrogance too. That people, you're trying to tell me something that I don't know, or that I do know. I know more than you. There is some of that, but
well, and that really hits to the point of like how our conversations are, because we all have. I assume how long have you been in Bitcoin?
Myself?
Yeah.
Well, I have a long story because I started, I come from Argentina.
Yeah.
I discovered Bitcoin in 2011 when at that time, we had a very left government that we couldn't send or receive money from abroad, was a mess. The US dollar rate had different rates, one for the government and one on the free market. And I was working on digital marketing, on affiliate marketing, and I need to pay for advertising and receive payments. So one of the way my business partner came and said, there is this thing that is like a PayPal called Bitcoin. So we can pay and receive payment with that. But since then, I've been doing shitcoining, trading. When the price went up very high, I must sell because look at how smart I am. So I finally understood Bitcoin around 2021 during the Saylor conversation with Robert Breedlove. That time I went all in.
Well, and that kind of speaks to the point also. It's like you need to find the exact angle at which the conversation should focus on, because yours seems like was a need for business free of either coercion or external forces, right? Simply put, like having a conversation with someone on the right, you might want to talk about financial freedom, right? Someone on the left, that's not going to be the same kind of conversation. That's not going to land. So one of our local historical heroes, Abraham Lincoln, he was famous for saying something like, if you give me 5 hours to chop down a tree, I'm going to take the first 4 hours to sharpen my axe. As an educator, I always want to just kind of like, hey, let's teach, let's learn. But I found myself, as we've been doing this, Jeff and I have been doing this, backing up and saying, okay, what specifically is important to this person? What do they have background knowledge on that I can help scaffold and build their understanding in a very specific way? Because all of that other stuff, while true about Bitcoin, 21 million, we can go into all the different things. That doesn't mean anything to them. And trying to convince them, you have to break down the barriers that have already been built up elsewhere. Yeah. So it's really focusing that conversation.
Yeah. Sometimes it's really hard to know what that trigger point is for that particular individual or business. It's like, what is it? So, and you never really know until you start diving into that conversation with that individual.
And how do you approach people? Because for us in Latin America or people in Africa, Bitcoin is a need because it helped us to fight against huge inflation that we have. It helped us to fight against these totalitarian governments or the bank's account that we cannot do the same that you can do with a bank account in the United States or even in Hong Kong, where I'm live now. So how do you approach people to understand the problem and to start studying Bitcoin?
I think that's the part of the hardest thing for Americans is because we're basically saying, hey, you need to have this financial tool. And they're going to look at us like, well, why? Because we already have something that works really well. And in my opinion, I don't know if you'd say this, would agree with me, Tim, but I do believe that the West, Europe and the United States is probably going to be one of the last countries in the world to truly go down the orange hole and to adopt Bitcoin, because there's really no need. We haven't felt the pain that you felt in Argentina. And until we really do, there's not going to be that drastic shift. So I think it's got to get a lot worse before it gets better.
Pain is the best teacher.
It is.
Especially now, because when we see that Bitcoin drop, now is around 63K, people who is going through that pain, especially not us, because we have hard skin already, but people who bought probably at 90, at 100 something, and now is going through this process of seeing that, it's down, it's going down. I think when they went out of this correction, they will learn a lot about Bitcoin.
100%, 100%. And that's kind of the key for the education, because with education comes conviction. It's like, why would I hold on to something that's going down? Well, if you haven't zoomed out enough and understood Bitcoin in the big picture historically and what it solves, then there's, it's kind of rational. Why would you hold on to that?
Exactly. No, I always say that people come to Bitcoin during the bull market because number go up is a great tool of marketing, and people understand Bitcoin during the bear markets or the corrections. Now is the time to build. Now is the time to understand. One of the things that Chef said that I like to point, it's like you said that you are tired to bring dead soldiers in the plane, and you see a way of Bitcoin, a way to put an end of the wars. How do you see that?
Well, yeah, I think what it really boils down to is that for previous 25 years, ever since 9/11, there was no real skin in the game of the American people. They weren't, there wasn't a special tax. There wasn't a war bond movement or an effort to raise funds. It was, we just always had this constant conflict going on. And even when we started pulling out, and like, especially with Iraq, and my last deployment was in 2016, 2017, and we, quote, pulled out of Iraq, but we essentially pulled out and then we kind of shifted over to Kuwait, and we were flying operations out of Kuwait into Iraq. And my wife, when she told her friends that I was deployed, she was often told, like, "Oh, I thought the war was over. I thought we pulled out." It's just like, no, it's still going on. So I think that's just the ignorance of the American people, because there isn't a special tax. If you had a special tax on your paycheck, you looked and you itemized, oh, here's the conflict for this operation, or here's your tax to support the military, and you saw that number, you would have more skin in the game, and you'd say, well, why are we paying for that? What are we doing over there? I think if we had something like that, or if the people had to buy war bonds to fund these operations, then they'd probably call their politicians, say, I don't want to pay for this, get them out. So, and I think if we truly had a real threat to our nation that is something worth fighting for, then people would fund that conflict. And that's one of the reasons why I joined the military, is because I did want to defend the Constitution. I want to defend our freedoms and rights. I didn't want to fight for the military industrial complex and
imperialism.
Yeah. And I also, the one other thing I did in my career as an aviator and a pilot, I did fly as a civilian pilot over in Afghanistan because of the drawdown in the military over the previous, since basically the fall of the Soviet Union, there's a thing called LawCap 4. This is the Logistics Civilian Augmentation Program. So LawCap is it was the fourth iteration of this program, and it's basically to take civilians and then augment the military, because the military doesn't want to have to pay for, say, cooks or someone to clean toilets or to build infrastructure overseas. So you augment with government contracts. So Fluor was awarded a contract, like Halliburton, these other companies, and they say, "Hey, we're gonna go build buildings for the military overseas. You know, we're gonna refill planes. We're gonna have people manning the chow halls, bringing the food, things that you don't really think about. So if you have a deployed force, you have to have all that infrastructure over there to support the actual fighting forces. So LawCap is that program." So I was working for FlightWorks, and they had a contract with Fluor, who had the contract with DoD. So Fluor had roughly about 24,000 civilians over in Afghanistan at that time, between 2013, 2014, around that time. That's when I worked over there. And all we did is we shuttled the civilian contractors from the different bases. So you have to think, they have to get over there, they fly in, and then we have to move them to the different forward operating bases. And that's what I did. So I got to see the military industrial complex from that side of the conflict. So, and I made a ton of money doing it. It's amazing how much money was being poured into that. And now it makes a lot more sense. I mean, these are government contracts. They're written so that they are basically milking the system from DoD, who has an endless amount of money essentially that comes from the money printer. So that's like, oh, it's just all these little experiences I had. You put that all together. It's like, you have a deployed force in the military. These are, a lot of the enlisted, right, who are making almost nothing. They're on the front lines. And then you have these civilians that are on the back end supporting the forward troops, making a ton of money. And so are these companies. So it was just something else to, see that. So,
I see that. Yeah. I see that to like even expand that further. It's like in politics, I mean, if you boil it down, you hear the welfare versus warfare state, right? And as we've been seeing, and I'm not picking one side or the other, I'm trying to show that both sides, like the welfare side, if you've been paying attention to anything over the last year about the money being spent and diverted in other ways, not just the warfare side, but the welfare side, it's like, it's everywhere. And it's in every aspect of our society. And it's that way because of fiat. And I think that's where I was going.
Yes.
You were sharing.
Yes, totally agree on that. And coming back to the Illinois Bitcoin Council, tell us some activities that you do, because you talk about the politicians, but which kind of activities you do to orange pill the people, the business in the area, and what do you do?
So there's a number of things, and like Jeff said, we have volunteers, and we're also we have full-time jobs. Like me being a teacher, I've got summertime now that I can dig in more. But a lot of it is workshop based, where, like we said, we go to politicians. We've started to go to chambers of commerce. There's also a growing network of meetups around the state. Myself and Jeff has one up in Naperville, and I would venture to say there's 15, 20 maybe around the state. Jeff, you think?
That's probably about right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's spread out throughout the state, mostly up in the Chicago area. So think of those as nodes on the network, right? And while they're social in nature, there's also they're also educational. So a lot of what we're doing is kind of back to what we said, finding out what's important in each group, and providing them the information about Bitcoin that directly affects them. Because it is just an information asymmetry right now. The reason that we keep having these, one reason we keep having these booms and busts is because, like we said earlier, most people don't really have enough education to build that conviction. So what we find ourselves doing is just trying to reach out various ways, trying to set up meetings and really just help. We even went to a downtown Chicago church, just what was that, January, February of this year. So we support other initiatives. A couple of them real quick. The Bitcoin Scholarship Foundation, which is looking to give scholarships paid in Bitcoin, $500 scholarships to kids in low socioeconomic status,
Teenagers.
providing education, an actual Bitcoin and financial literacy curriculum from ages 5 to 18, right? We're also supporting the Altgeld Bitcoin Reserve. Altgeld Gardens is one of the more impoverished areas of the south side of Chicago. And our guy up there, Tobias Shepard, he is trying to create a community reserve. Get Bitcoin, lock it for 5 years, and then every year shave off a little bit for the community. And the community gets to determine, it gives them more sovereignty over their own, future. So both the ABR and the BSF and us, the IBC, we went to a church, Pastor Rob Stevenson, great church downtown, very passionate individual, and he let us have the floor, and we gave our presentations, but also stayed around and talked to the community and tried to help them understand what Bitcoin is and why you should buy and hold for the long term. Mm-hmm. And like we said, speaking to them, like I focused our part of the speech on the moral case for Bitcoin. And if you even think of like Bitcoin versus fiat in terms of not the number, not quantity, but the quality of the network, like would you rather have one that you have to ask for permission or one that's permissionless? Would you rather have one that you can be censored or one that's not censored? Immutability versus, and so again, it's really just finding the people and meeting them where they're at is kind of the way we've been going about it over the last year.
And don't forget, Tim, you also did the workshop at the Capitol.
Yep.
That was a big one too. I wasn't there for that one, so
we were pushing. So Tobias has the Community Bitcoin Reserve Act. We were pushing the Digital Asset Investment Act, which allows municipalities to invest up to 5% in Bitcoin and Bitcoin related products. Currently
the law is that the municipalities are not allowed. It's not legal for them to actually own digital assets. So that's one thing that we're trying to get pushed through.
Right.
So,
and even met with the Illinois Libertarian Convention just this last month and had a very nice talk with them. So,
I'm the libertarian because I spoke a lot of people from the libertarian world, and they don't understand Bitcoin, and they are more gold. How about the libertarians in the United States?
So the group that I was with, I would probably say, 10% really knew it deeply. A majority of them have heard of it, but I'm sorry. Sorry. They've heard about it, but not really have a good deep understanding, and some of them were still even a little skeptical. There was even an economist there who had heard of it, but it took our talk to really dig into her concerns. And after the conversation, she was like, "Yeah, I'm, give me a referral link somewhere." It just takes time, and a lot of people understandably have issues going, they have their own things going on, they have their families, they have their work, and trying to find that time to just take the time to understand it is really all it takes. You just need somebody with an open mind and willing to give you some time. I think that's all it is. And we're providing the time and the education.
Excellent. And also, are you onboarding businesses to accept Bitcoin?
Yeah. So obviously Chicago is Illinois for all intents and purposes. Even though it takes up a very small area of land, it takes up the majority of our state population. So we've created a number of databases that we're trying to help connect the different various groups in Illinois. But one is the Chicago Bitcoin Chicago merchants. And like Jeff was speaking earlier, Cash App, Square, we're trying to locate all of these businesses, trying to get, we have volunteers handing out flyers, trying to bring them into the network and provide that education, not specifically, not so much Bitcoin, but more of the Lightning Network. Like, how does that affect them as businesses? No clawbacks, the instant final settlement, instead of the credit card fees being up to 3%, you're now in less than 1%, so trying to really help them understand the benefits there.
Yeah. And for example, even though I'm a pilot, so I fly all over the world, but I was in Oscoda, Michigan yesterday morning, and the little coffee shop across the street from my hotel, going there just get a coffee, and I see that she's got a Square terminal. I was like, oh, cool. Hey, can I pay in Bitcoin? No, not even sure what it is. And so I was like, all right. So I go back to my room and get a flyer that we have printed out about the Lightning Network and get a Bitcoin accepted here sticker. And so I go talk to the business owner, nice lady, and immediately was just like, no, I'm not interested in this. I don't get it, don't understand it. And I was like, well, if you got a few minutes, let me just talk about it and just kind of explain some of the differences between what the dollar, using dollar versus Bitcoin. And if you've ever watched Michael Schmid, he's actually from Switzerland, but he's also part of Bitcoin Veterans, Tim. But he did the podcast with Stacy. But I saw him on Preston Pish's show, and he does a great explanation of Bitcoin. He calls it Bitcoin 101, and he just kind of walks through the real basics of this technology. And so I kind of watch his show 3 or 4 times just to take how he explains it, kind of summarize it down into 3 minutes. That's what I did for this lady in this coffee shop, and she's like, oh, I kind of get it. And so I say, hey, take a look at our flyer, but if you really reach out to the Michigan Bitcoin Trade Council and talk to Amber Harris, so even though it's part of the IBC, but I still gave her our IBC material just to at least try to plant that seed. And I think if she does start to learn more about Bitcoin and realizes that Bitcoin is cheaper to use, it'll save me 2 to 3% of my transaction fees. She can convert some of the Bitcoin into dollars, back into dollars, or vice versa. And maybe she'll start a Bitcoin meetup. Who knows? Maybe a year from now, if she's running a meetup, and then this little town of 3,000 people in very far northern Michigan, it might start to spread into a more of a circular economy in Oscoda, Michigan. So you never know. So we just got to keep planting these seeds wherever we go, and just to get that adoption or at least that education, that knowledge of what it is. And so they can at least make an informed decision before they blanket say, I don't want anything to do with this. So.
Yes, totally agree on that. And how is the adoption in Illinois?
It's slow and steady.
Slow.
Jeff's mentioned planting the seeds. Pardon.
You reap what you sow.
What I've learned
we grow corn in the state.
Yeah, what I've learned from agriculture, from farming, is you don't harvest the plant on the same day you plant it. You know what I mean? So it's a marathon, not a sprint. We're in it for the long haul. Obviously, really digging in and understanding Bitcoin, you have a much better outlook on time preference. So I'm not concerned with the adoption right now. Just like I'm not concerned with the dip down to 60K. You know, it's like, okay, zoom out. So that's kind of where I'm at with it.
And sometimes it feels like we're screaming, the world is going to flood. The world is going to flood. We need to build this ark. And everyone's looking at us like, it's not even raining. It's like, what's that movie with Stephen Carell?
Evan Almighty or?
Yeah, Evan Almighty too. Yeah. It's kind of what it feels like sometimes when you go out there like, oh, you need to adopt Bitcoin. You start using this. We're going to have this hyperinflation. You know, the dollar's going to collapse. No, I don't see that happening.
It's happening slowly instead.
And which were the craziest explanation that people give when you go and say, okay, you should accept Bitcoin, and they come up with a crazy explanation that
in addition to the tulips, which still blows my mind, I've had a politician or someone in government, let's say like, okay, this all makes sense, but I heard that one world currency mark of the beast 666. It's like,
I've gotten that too.
And my response to him was like, okay, so if there was something like that, do you think it would be centralized or decentralized? Do you think you would there be one in control, or would everyone allow control? And it kind of froze him dead, but I don't think I changed his mind in that one conversation. Hopefully it gave him some pause, but I've heard that, and it just like, to me, that just means you haven't thought through it enough, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think what else. Jeff, you got any good ones?
Oh, no, I've gotten that too. Like one world currency. This is revelations. Yeah, it's like, well,
I've had the cashless people, you know, it's like, well, you need physical dollars because, and they honestly think Bitcoin being digital means like CBDC level control. And again, that's just like a lack of just not knowing the protocol. Yeah. Like, no, it's actually the good form of digital currency. It's what you actually want. And the reason you're holding on to your dollars and your physical things is because you don't understand that this is a counterbalance to the whole CBDC total control panopticon.
Yeah. And I think to that point, Tim, it's like understanding the difference between proof of work and proof of stake is key. But we as consumers or users of the internet, we don't understand how SMTP works. We just use it. And we need to get to that point where people just know that, oh, Bitcoin it just works. It's something, you know, it retains value. I don't need to know what proof of work is, proof of stake. People won't even know what that is in the future, in my opinion. But we're way far away from that.
Another, it wasn't really like just showing the ignorance. I even sat down with a gentleman, a legislator who touts themselves as you know, kind of an expert in this area, and in the conversation found out that he had no idea about the positive externalities of Bitcoin mining on the environment, on energy, on anything of that such. And even while I was just trying to be like, oh no, here's just like one little thing. He literally said to us, "Are you guys crazy? Are you real?" And it was like, you're not even using like all the information available. You're cherry picking your own information to make your assumptions. And part of me thinks he was in the pocket, or the crypto lobby was in his pocket. But most of everything that I've heard, I mean, to kind of put an umbrella over this whole thing, is just a lack of education. It's a complete lack of knowledge. Like not knowing the difference, like Jeff said, between proof of work, proof of stake, is so huge.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, how do you counteract that? It's like a zombie apocalypse, and we're trying to fight back with education. Really.
But I think that I like the point that you both say that you need to plant the seeds and you need to wait. I think that the task, the mission that we are going through is just talking about sometimes they will look at you as crazy as you say, okay, we need to build an ark. It's not even raining. So, and it's going through this process. Some people will listen, some people no. And the good way is to explain to everyone who comes what is Bitcoin in a simple way. Why do they need Bitcoin? And then everyone will go through their own rabbit hole. I think. I think that every one of us have different views and going through different rabbit holes. But I think the time will come when most of the people use Bitcoin, even though without even knowing that they are using Bitcoin.
Yeah, and there's evidence to support that you don't need global adoption for that to happen. You just need a critical mass, and I think that's somewhere around 10%. And while we're not there yet, we will be, and I've accepted that it may not be in our lifetimes when we see that full hyper Bitcoinization, the unit of account, and all that. It could be, but that's something I've had to accept, and I'm okay with that because I think it's directionally correct. And if I'm going to spend any of my time and effort on the limited time I have left in my life, it's going to be on something that is a net positive for society moving forward.
Yes, totally agree on that. And you teach in the grassroots levels, but I want to ask you, what do you think about the institutional adoption of Bitcoin, the ETF, the treasuries? Now there is a lot of controversy with sailors selling Bitcoin. What do you think about that?
And he sold 0.00% of his stack. Yeah. I believe in, like you mentioned earlier, Bitcoin is for everybody. And I believe in all use cases. And I see some even in Bitcoin thinking, well, if this use case is adopted, then it's going to counteract these other use cases. And I don't believe that. I think if Bitcoin is for everybody, if Bitcoin is anti-fragile, then it should be able to accommodate all use cases. So I'm all for it. Do what you want to do. It's not that they're going to co-opt Bitcoin per se. You've been through the block size war. So I think that simple trite phrase, everything's good for Bitcoin.
Totally agree on that.
Joe Consorti did a good piece a couple days ago on sailors sell, and it actually makes a lot of sense when he broke it down. That one of the things that I might not get this completely correct, but one of the things that the SEC and the regulators are looking at for including a MicroStrategy or strategy into the S&P 500 and that index is that their assets have to be essentially liquid. And so he sold 32 Bitcoin just to say, yes, we can actually sell it. So we can generate this liquidity to fund our dividends. Okay, so that piece is checked. So if you get a chance, I would watch his breakdown of this topic, and it makes a lot of sense. So I think it actually is good in the long run when you understand what Sailor is doing. I think he's also admitted that, yeah, we can sell Bitcoin if we need to. The whole never sell your Bitcoin, that quote might have actually been more harmful than helpful in the long run.
Well, and always be a net accumulator, I think, is what it's been replaced with. But yeah, I see your point.
Right. And the way that Joe broke it down, it's like if you had $1 million, you basically sold $32 worth of assets. It's just like, it's a scratch. It's like, okay, it's nothing. But as far as institutional adoption, I don't know. I think there this is one thing that we don't really talk about in the Bitcoin community, is that we always want to talk about self-custody. But when you come and you break down that the size of the blocks and self-custody, it's impossible for 8 billion people to self-custody on chain. It's not possible. So we are going to have Bitcoin banks. We are going to have institutions that are going to custody the Bitcoin for us. And we're going to have to use second layer, maybe even third layers on top of the blockchain. That's just the nature of the beast. We don't really talk about it that much. So I think institutional adoption is key to further Bitcoin's adoption. So
I'd also say, sorry.
Go ahead.
I'd also put on the end of that at the IBC, we teach self-custody. We promote sovereign solutions, while also we have members that have solutions for us. And just like with education, we want to individualize that education. What Jeff's pointing out is there's a lot of different needs for different people. So some of our members will be very privacy focused, self-custody first, and others may not be. And, the libertarian in me, who am I to tell you how to conduct your business? You know what I mean?
I think that's the beautiful thing about it.
I have most of mine in self-custody, but I also have some that's being custodied for potentially, like, what if I, get hit in a car wreck? My wife and kids will have, through River, they'll have the beneficiary set up. So, I mean, there's not one solution for everybody. Andreas Antonopoulos had the sovereignty staircase concept years ago, and I support that. And everybody's going to have to find out what works for them. But again, Bitcoin is for everybody, and it solves for all use cases, and that doesn't take away from another use case.
And that's what's beautiful about Bitcoin, is because it does have that range of options, from full self-custody where you're running your own node to doing just an ETF. I mean, there's that options. It allows more access to the asset into the protocol.
Yes, agree on that. I'm a big supporter of the institutional adoption, and I think that is the way to make Bitcoin massive. Self-custody is not for everyone. Not many people wants to do self-custody, and not many people you can orange pill them through the self-custody, but you can orange pill that saying your money is deteriorating, this is the way to go, and you can get from this, and this way. And I think that all contributes to the adoption. And about the council, what are the future plans for the upcoming month and years of the Illinois Bitcoin Council?
Yeah. First things first is increasing membership, providing value to members, individual members, small businesses, even corporations, bringing larger businesses into, like, of the financial sector into our state. So we're not Texas, we're not one of the big mining states, or we're not a mining state at all. We got some wind capacity, but that's about it. So adoption here is probably going to look more in the financial sector. So really trying to, excuse me, get chambers of commerce talking, get legislators talking, getting merchants talking in Bitcoin. So membership is a huge drive for us. And then also just trying to just continue the education, continue finding people where they're at.
Yeah. And reaching out and getting our membership up is key. We're only just 1 year into the IPD, so
first year in.
The first 6 months, it just took Tim did a lot of the grunt work to get the organization up and running. So now we're kind of like, okay, we're past our 1 year mark. We're trying to get as many members into the organization, because that will give us more weight, power, clout when we talk to representatives. And if we had 500,000 people emailing state representatives, that is going to sway them to look at us as a serious organization. So that's sort of like our goals, growing our membership. Second, do you want to talk about August 1st, or is that something you want
to? Yeah, and we're also trying to have really bring in more high signal events, try and bring more of the conversations to each other, legislators together with business owners and the like. I was also going to mention that we're also trying to help other states build up their councils. So Jeff mentioned Amber Harris from the Michigan Bitcoin Trade Council. She and I and a group are trying to help onboard other state councils. Like Georgia right now is starting one, talking with people in Wisconsin. There's already some, obviously Texas, but there's already some groups in, let's say, Oklahoma, North Carolina, even Kentucky, Indiana, that are trying to build their own state councils. So the more we can get that thinking globally, acting locally happening, the more we can have this grassroots adoption that we believe is happening.
Yes, agree on that. And the last questions to finish the podcast are two. The first one is, what do you think about the future of Bitcoin?
in orange?
Man, I don't see how it can't. Good ideas don't require force. And if you look at everything we've learned about fiat over the last 100 years, it's a story of force. And with Bitcoin, that is not its story. It has been voluntary. It has been permissionless. And I think it will continue to grow because of all those properties that make it superior to other monetary systems. So while the waves up close may seem turbulent, you look out over the horizon and it just looks clear sailing to me. I believe we're on the right side of history. I believe we're doing the right things, and I'm going to continue down that path because that's how I see Bitcoin just growing in many different ways, in ways we haven't even seen yet. The whole digital credit narrative, whether that, materializes or not, there's going to be so many other use cases. Heating, as out of mining, there's so many different ways it's growing and seeping into society that I just think it's just going to keep going, and it's going to, like Jeff even mentioned earlier, or one of you mentioned earlier, it's just going to be a part of the system, whether people realize it or not. Whether they're using the word Bitcoin or not, Bitcoin's going to proliferate throughout society, and it's going to have net positive effects.
Yeah, it almost, I don't know what your opinion is, but it almost feels like there's going to be some turbulent times in the next year and a half, especially with the oil shock that has occurred because of Iran. And it just feels like the housing prices are just gone through the roof. I think there's going to be a potential correction in that. And if you do have a recession, what's going to happen. The money printer is going to go burr, and then you probably see all, big correction in the stock market, and then we're going to pump it up. And I think that's possibly when we might have a big rip up to $150,000, $200,000. I don't know if that's what you're looking at as a metric, the number go up. But I think if we do get a big rip up, that is going to turn a lot of eyes to Bitcoin and have more people look at the asset and say, well, why is it going from 60 to 200,000? I would like to see a big number go up, not just for the finance, but just to get people to look at it again. It's very cold right now in the market.
Yes, totally agree. So sometimes we have a stream with my business partner every morning in Asia that we do in Spanish. And most of the people that follow us are Bitcoiners and say, oh, good, the price is going down. I can buy more. The thing is that I want to see a big pump on the price of Bitcoin, not only for the finance side, because not only for myself, but for Bitcoin itself. If we go to 200,000, more eyes will be put on Bitcoin. more people will come to Bitcoin. More people will ask you to explain Bitcoin on how these Bitcoin things work. And I think that the price goes up is good for all the Bitcoin itself, not only for the finance. So I hope I'm sure it will happen soon. I'm sure it will happen soon. So
yeah, it's just
in the meantime, these times of corrections are good for education, are good for stacking, and are good for building whatever you are building on Bitcoin. So we have a lot of, I like to say the same as you, the future is bright and orange. And the last question, if you had the chance to sit down with Satoshi Nakamoto, what would you ask or say to him, to her, or to them?
I don't know. I don't know.
That's crazy. So he mentioned about lost coins or a donation to the network. I was like, maybe I might just ask him, you could just donate to me. I don't know. No, geez, that's a great question. I'd probably go back to where was the moment that sparked, the moment that it just made sense to you. Like, what was going through your head? What were you reading up until then? What were you studying? Because you got to think there's a pre-Bitcoin Satoshi, right? Before Bitcoin was even in his mind. And I'm sure, all the mailing lists, all the cypherpunks and everything, and studying Hashcash and all of the other iterations, I would like to know that lead up story.
Yeah, it's like, how did you put all the pieces together, looking at all these technologies, these prior attempts to make digital cash? What was the moment that you like, oh, if I just put the puzzle together like this should work? Like,
yeah. Basically it's the same question that I would ask, that is, how was he Orange Pill, or she, or them? When he was convinced that this was the way, and it's a great question to ask. So guys, thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure to talk to you and to know what are you doing in Illinois. To close, anything else you want to add and how people can contact you?
You can reach us. We're on socials. We're on Twitter, or X. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're on Nostr. We have IllinoisBitcoinCouncil.org. Reach out to talk to us if you just want to chat, or if you have ideas on how we can, better reach members in Illinois.
Yeah. Don't forget Club Orange.
Club Orange.
We got a group on Club Orange. We have a chat group there too as well. So
excellent. Guys, thank you very much for your time. I wish you the best, and I hope to talk in the future again to see how all this situation in Illinois is evolving.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Occasionally I get an overnight in Hong Kong. I'll come visit you.
Of course. Let me know. Yeah. If you are flying, just send me a message and we can go for some food or beer or whatever you want.
Are you on Club Orange? I can message you there.
No, there is a problem. That's what Club Orange was previous Orange Pill app. And I was there. And one time, I don't know what happened, that my credit card failed or whatever. So I uninstalled the app. And when I tried to install it again, I couldn't find in the app store, in the Mac, the Apple App Store. And I asked the founder,
Matteo,
the Italian guy that I had him in the podcast, and he told me that it was because there were many scams in Hong Kong using the app. So they don't allow anymore in Hong Kong. So I'm not in the app. So I'm on Twitter. So
okay, that's too bad.
That's too bad.
But yeah, I'm on Twitter. Just send me a message, and again, we can meet here in Hong Kong.
Perfect.
Well, thank you very much again, guys.
All right, we'll talk soon.
Thank you. Have a good day.
And thank you very much. And thank you very much to everyone who is on the other side. If you like the episode, give us a like, subscribe to our channel, follow us in social media, follow our guest, because if you don't follow our guest, I get angry, because doing so, you help us a lot to keep painting the world orange. Share this episode with the people you love. Share this episode with the people you hate, because we must give the orange pill to 8 billion people. See you in the next episode. Stay humble, stack sats, and remember, we are all Satoshi.